Good evening. It's October 25th, 2010. Athens City Council is meeting in a series of committee meetings tonight. We're a little bit late. Tonight was Athens Uptown Business Association's Trick or Treat. Tremendously successful event. Brought a lot of traffic uptown, and we waited a few minutes for some of the council members and some audience members to get in. So we're a few minutes late. The committees that are going to meet tonight are Safety Services Committee, the Transportation Committee, the Finance and Personnel Committee, and City Services Committee. Okay. We will begin with the Safety Services Committee. Member Kuhn is the chair of that committee.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We are talking about carbon monoxide detectors again tonight. We, as you know, have already discussed them quite a bit. We've had input from several people, including our fire chief. Chief Troxel believes that it's important that carbon monoxide detectors be UL approved, have a digital readout, are AC with battery backup, but not a lithium battery, and must be installed near sleeping areas. We also heard, this is just to review a little bit, we also heard from a landlord, Alan McMillan, who was very supportive of requiring carbon monoxide detectors in rental units. We presented an ordinance, it was read twice, and then we heard from Rudy Leatherman, who came to council and gave us a demonstration. He is not happy with UL listed carbon monoxide detectors. He doesn't think they alarm as soon as they should. They don't alarm under 30 parts per million. And he had some other concerns as well, such as the not being able to check the sensors to see if the sensors are really working or not. So before the third reading, so that we could decide what we wanted to do, did we want to make some changes to our ordinance, or did we want to keep it as it is, or what we were going to do? It was tabled before the third reading and is still tabled. So, pardon me. So that's the purpose of bringing it before everyone again tonight. I emailed Mr. Leatherman a copy of our ordinance, and I asked him what would he change, and he responded with an email which was forwarded to everyone. I don't know if they had a chance to look at it or not. If you didn't have a chance to, I have some copies here, and I also have copies of our ordinance if anyone needs to look at those. We also have a CD, or that I was given a CD by the Government Channel. The Government Channel interviewed Ohio University's Dr. Tim Ryan regarding carbon monoxide detectors. And it was sort of a different perspective, which I'd like to share a little bit with you tonight. He had a project, and I think 30 units were tested. These were carbon monoxide detectors that were actually being used in people's homes, and people would bring them in. They would give them a loaner detector so that they would be covered while the testing was going on. And it took 10 days to do a turnaround. Apparently, there's more to carbon monoxide testing than maybe we thought. He also indicated that there is no in-home testing of carbon monoxide detectors, and there's no commercial testing of carbon monoxide detectors. The failures that he discussed, there are two. There are fail-safe detector failures. That means that they alarm too early, resulting in a false alarm for the fire department. And of course that involves the risk of traffic accidents and so forth. The other failure is fail unsafe, and that means that the carbon monoxide detector indicates that it's working fine. If you push the button, I guess it will alarm, and you think it's fine. However, the sensor may not be working, and so that would cause it to fail. And apparently, he tested 30 units, 21% of them failed unsafe. So, that's a concern. But he indicated that the older the carbon monoxide detector is, the more likely it is to fail. And so since there's a problem testing the sensor, that you really need to replace them every 5 to 7 years. And he also indicated that the cheaper the carbon monoxide detector is, the more likely it is to fail. So that if you have a choice between a $20 carbon monoxide detector and a $45 carbon monoxide detector, you should buy the $45 carbon monoxide detector. Sort of, you get what you pay for. And so so we just need to decide what we would like to do with our ordinance. Mr. Leatherman said, we have in our ordinance now that the batteries should be UL batteries. He says there are no, as far as he knows, there are no UL batteries. I don't know, so maybe someone could enlighten me on that. So I thought that perhaps we might consider adding something to our ordinance, that they be replaced every 5 years, or perhaps as per the manufacturer's recommendation, something to that effect. And also that we might add that landlords may install additional carbon monoxide detectors if they desire. The ones that Mr. Leatherman were talking about were much more expensive, and I can't remember exactly what he indicated the price was. It seems to me it was in the $100 range, perhaps, but I'm not positive on that. So I'm just opening it up to other council members to see what your thoughts are on what we should do about our tabled ordinance.
Other council members?
Well, it seems that the recommendations that he made in the letter, they seemed reasonable. I mean, I would think that we could add, as you had suggested, the clause that, maybe set it at a minimum for the carbon monoxide detectors, and then if they want to install additional, they could.
That would be fine.
I think that would.
Okay. Anybody else?
Member Bain, did you start to say something? No. I think that our code office has gone to annual inspections of rentals, and so it would be relatively easy for them to keep track of the age of a carbon monoxide detector and let the owner know that it's time to replace it if they're not keeping up with it. So I think that's a reasonable addition also.
Okay. Mayor, did you have anything to?
So really what you're talking about is amending what you have, striking out the UL battery backup, UL period.
Battery.
Yeah, just
Right.
keep battery backup in there.
Right.
And where would you put the 5-year cycling in here? The section entirely, or?
What do you think? Do you think it should be another section entirely? I was just going to sort of tack it on with Debbie's help.
Okay. I think it's a good recommendation now.
Okay.
It should be changed every 5 years.
5 years, every 5 years?
I would say probably should rather than shall. And the reason why I say that is I think the technology will keep changing, and eventually we'll get better detectors where 5-year replacements would not be necessary. That is the hope, at least. Pricing-wise, it's, again, Mr. McMillan was very concerned that he'd go for the high benchmark, and it's really up to the landlord at that point how safe they want their tenants.
I sort of had a problem requiring a landlord to spend $100 on a per carbon monoxide detector. You know, if you own a lot of property, I know you can't put a price on a human life, but if you own a lot of properties, that could be very expensive.
But okay, we're giving them to a full year, September, it looks like, of 2011, or less
Not
than a
quite
full
a
year
year.
at this point. You can always back that up if you choose to. But if you start looking at the rental market, we're averaging $400 to $500 a month. So really, you know, their investment on the safe house is $100 per unit, at $500 per unit. Although even the multi-unit, you're just putting it in areas, right? Or you can, let's see, each bedroom?
In all sleeping areas.
Yeah.
I see your point.
It's an investment for safety.
It's about 500 per bedroom, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot more than that for the house.
Right.
Well, okay, if they have if they have three
If they have
rooms.
3 bedrooms, they're making $1,500 a month.
Okay, and they're spending,
Not to minimize, but...
and they're spending $300 as a one shot every 5 years.
Right, well, as it's written, it could just be in an area by the bedroom, right? By all 3 of them clustered together.
It could be one.
Problem, the number of vendors in town is limited, and asking for 5,000 of these, or however many we need, or 10,000, it could be a landfall. I mean, it might even cause a stimulus situation going on here, but on the other hand, just securing them could be a problem. So I'd like to suggest that we go to the first of the year. When
To the first of the year?
Yeah, when
Okay.
the cycle starts again on inspections.
Okay.
And that gives, and forewarned is forearmed. Cliche, cliche.
Well, again, we're talking about 5,000, 6,000 monitors maybe. That's quite a few, but a full year's worth. I know I've gone to some hardwares and said, you know, there's a sign saying smoke detectors as described by Athens City Code. So,
Right.
so there's a market, there's an awareness. It's no different than your textbooks at the college stores here, the bookstores. They know which courses are available and they know how to stock them up down to the individual classes.
But is it true that the inspections start on an annual basis, or are they just continuous? Are they continuous?
That's correct, annually.
It is annual, but you're talking about the rewind. It just cycles through. So
Okay, so the person is always going to be inspected in September and September.
unless we modify it, we could always modify it depending on what goes on. But we probably won't speed up the process, if anything.
There has to be a start date at some
Yeah.
point. So
Well, then, I mean, I was
choose
saying
first of
1st
year.
of January, but I could go back to the original one.
No, just,
Oh, you went 1st of January this 2011,
No,
2011?
that's impossible.
No, oh, 2012. Okay, I was a little bit confused.
That would be
when
the
you said-
absolute minimum, but if they haven't,
Okay. I was kind of surprised. I thought you were moving the clock up and not down.
well,
Okay.
I would be drawn a quarter.
okay.
Yes. Member,
Okay. It was just a thought that as we go through, so we will have now, if we enact it to be effective January 1, 2012, we'd have an entire year of inspections. So maybe we could even, is there an annual inspection sheet or something that we hand off to landlords where we could be putting on, by the way?
It's coming.
A notice that they need to be thinking about that.
Okay. In other words, informing all the landlords in the city.
Right. A year
Put in
ahead
a
of
gold
time.
star when they have one.
Yeah.
Gold Star?
Whatever.
Member Gosney?
I was just going to ask, I don't have the original ordinance in front of me, was there an exception for all electric units or properties that did not have any potential source of
They're really,
monoxide?
that's not in there. And we talked about that a little bit. The problem with that is, what if you decide you want to bring little hibachi inside your living room and cook, you know? I'm just a little nervous about having an exception for all
Stupid text.
I'm just a little nervous about that. How do you feel about that?
I think, I've looked at some other draft ordinances, and this was in the past, but I think I pretty much always saw an exception for
All electric?
for apartments that were all electric or
With no detachment, with no attachment.
Right.
without
Right, if they have,
garages attached.
so do you think we should have that exception then?
Why not?
Okay. Okay. Okay, any other thoughts?
Thank you, Member Kuhn. Do you have any other issues to bring up?
I don't have any miscellaneous. Does anybody have miscellaneous for safety?
Since it is Safety Services Committee, I do want to mention we do have for Halloween safety teams, looking for volunteers, of course, and contact Ron Lucas or Paul Logue about it. And I also am aware of the fact there is a weather alert sent actually by AEP about high winds coming our way
Tonight?
Tuesday,
Oh.
tomorrow. There's a front coming through, and we expect between about, what are we talking about, 5 to 8, and High Valley 6 to 9, line of severe thunderstorms. So just so you know.
Thank you. That's
We're much more
appropriate.
sensitized now, aren't we? Sensitized to it.
Okay, that's all for the safety committee.
Okay, we'll move on to Transportation Committee. Member Knight?
Thank you. We have two items tonight. The first one is about the Northwest Bike Path Extension. And this is a project, it's number 255, and it will be our intent to introduce an ordinance next week to introduce the authorization and appropriation of money for the project. And it will be a portion of it. This is a larger project. The grand total project cost is approximately $221,000. We do have money from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources for a grant that will reimburse us for part of this. The authorization and appropriation that will be coming up next week will be for the contracted portion. That's the carpentry and other construction that will be occurring on the bridge itself. The city...
I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt right now. Could you just, first of all, explain what the Northwest Extension is? Describe it
The
for people.
portion of the bike path that goes, and this is the bridge portion. and
Off the old
it's
right-of-way.
over to Route 6. It goes over
682.
towards Route 682.
Yeah.
Goes in
It's-
Armitage Road area. Yes, thank you for the clarification. Requesting it. The current cost estimate for the portion that we'll be contracting out will be approximately $120,000. So once we get the total project cost, we will be reimbursed for portions of that by Ohio Department of Natural Resources. So the maximum amount of the project in cash expended by the city will be approximately $50,000 once we get the reimbursement.
And I think the Finance Committee said we take it out of 270, recreation.
Okay.
Find out what she brings up.
Okay.
And it'll be reimbursed. I thought the number was 100,000.
Well, Andy's saying he doesn't think it will be, this is Public Work Director, so Andy Stone doesn't think at this point that it will be anything more than 120,000. Might be less for the appropriation. But I'll confirm that with him before the
About a 270.
ordinance.
Unappropriated.
270?
Unappropriated, right? And then
Recreation.
appropriate it and authorize.
We're asking for an appropriation and authorization. I
Yeah.
believe we're going to ask for that from recreation because it is a recreation activity.
The second agenda item that I have, and I'm going to ask our auditor, Kathy Heck, to help us with this, is a discussion of the Oxbow Bridge, or this is the Richland Avenue Bridge over the Oxbow is what we've been calling it. And some of the monies, we have had an ordinance that's been authorized for the design and engineering work coming up this year, and then with the repairs to be done later in 2012. So I believe we have some clarification or additional information. Auditor Hecht, if you can help us with that.
I just talked to Andy and Jessica this afternoon who were asking about this, and as some of you know, in the past, this is always an issue. Last year, they had done some testing, and not exactly engineering, but different things, for almost $20,000 when they were thinking about doing the project. Often the engineering is done the same way. We don't have a project number, and we aren't sure we're going to do the project, but once we decide, then that money needs to be scooped up into the total amount of cost for that project. So he will have an appropriation for an additional about $20,000. It might be like 19.5, I think is about what it was, something like that. So he'll have an additional appropriation for that. And then the other thing was just to make it clear that passed this year an ordinance authorizing a $200,000 expenditure without appropriating the money. However, the money was already appropriated in the budget last December for this year, the 01-5009. So if anybody looks at that and says, you know, what happened, but he already has the $200,000 in his budget. That's it for that stuff.
Is it under 500 or 300? I think Debbie's getting,
500.
it's under 500. She was looking perplexed. She has to do.
Are there any miscellaneous transportation items?
Mayor? Looked like the mayor wanted to say something.
What?
Said it looked like he wanted to say something. But
Me?
Yeah,
I think I was saving for finance personnel.
okay.
Okay.
Then, could you save that a little bit longer? We were thinking that we might ask AEP to move ahead on the agenda.
No problem.
Is that a problem?
Transportation, Athens Transit,
our meeting.
finance and personnel.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think we have that much for finance, do we?
Transportation.
Transportation,
What about the TC 100s?
recreation.
That's it? 30,000 for recreation?
So we can deal with that. I mean, we're not
FDP.
doing away, we would never do away with finance and transportation.
So we will still have that committee?
Yes, we'll still have that. We're just asking that we'll hold off a moment and let AEP go ahead so they don't need to sit here through more.
Although
John,
they did
you're
hear
up.
that it was.
Is that you, Nancy? That's your...
What? This is my committee, and Mr. Buck is walking to the podium right now, and he's responding to the request. Actually, in '06, we had an ordinance that requested additional scrutiny uptown and on East State Street, and he's here to talk about the power outages that we had that were perceived to be a problem. And actually, I guess, anyway, I'll let him take over from here and talk about what went on. There were 4 altogether, right, Mr. Buck?
And we appreciate the offer to be able to come before council tonight. And of course, we enjoyed our meeting earlier this month. And thanks for asking us to consider coming. We certainly appreciate it. We're pretty well represented tonight. Again, my name's John Buck. I'm Community Affairs Manager for AEP Ohio, including the Athens area. But I'll point everybody out to Tim Saifang, who's the Distribution Systems Manager. And we have also Chris McDaniel, who is an engineer in project design, Mark Westfall, who's supervisor of the distribution system. Immediately behind Mark is Jeff Rennie, who's a primary corporate communications consultant, and Steve Stanley is our utility forester, and Anthony DeBoard is the customer services representative, including for the Athens area. And we're going to have 2 or 3 folks to give just a very brief presentation, their area of expertise, and we'll start off. And any questions you have, please feel free to ask us. We'll try to address them as best we can. First on our list, though, is Tim Saifang, the Distribution Systems Manager. He'll go over primarily the history that has prompted some of these discussions. So, Tim's next.
What's that? Hi. Like John said, my name's Tim Saifang, and I'm the district manager down here in Athens. And what I'm going to talk to you about first are the 4 outages that have occurred in the last 12 months that affected East State Street. And East State Street is actually served by 3 distribution circuits. And I know it's going to be kind of hard to see if you're far away, but we've kind of got them laid out on here. And those circuits are, they're all served out of Stroud's Run Substation. And it's 230-01, 230-02, and 230-04 are the 3 circuits in question out there. And the first outage occurred on January the 24th, and that was caused when an insulator failed. And I brought an insulator with me. The insulators are, this is a typical one that's made out of ceramic, and what sometimes happens is those, they get small cracks in them, moisture gets in them, freezing and thawing, and then they fail. So that particular outage affected one of the circuits, one of the 3 circuits we're talking about. The second outage occurred on June the 9th, And that was caused when a tree outside of the right-of-way fell and took out a transmission line that serves the Stroud's Run substation. And it might be helpful to understand the way the system's set up. You have a power plant that's located some miles away from town, and the power is transported over transmission lines, high voltages, that come to a substation, in this case Stroud's Run substation. And from there, the voltage is changed to distribution voltages, which that's what you see in your neighborhoods on the lines coming through there. So a transmission right-of-way is typically 50 to 100 feet wide, and so this was a tree that would have been outside of that right-of-way. So, of course, we don't cut the trees outside of our right-of-way. We just take care of the stuff inside. The third outage was on August the 14th when a lightning arrestor inside a substation failed, and there was lightning in the area when that happened, so we're pretty sure that what happened is that took a lightning strike. And so that affected two of the circuits out there. And then the final outage occurred on September the 16th, and that's when the tornado came through. And of course, there was quite a bit of damage to a lot of the facilities with that. So in summary, we had two outages caused by the equipment failure they're typically tied to weather events. One when a tree fell outside the right-of-way, and then of course the tornado. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris McDaniels, and Chris is going to talk about some of the things that we've done recently and also what we do to protect the facilities out there.
Thanks, Tim. Like you said, I'm Chris McDaniel. I'm the local engineer for the Athens area. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we lay out our system and how we protect our system when there's problems on it. On an electric system, you have two different types of problems, or what we call faults, and they would be in the temporary nature or in the permanent nature. And give you a few examples. If a tree limb would fall blow out of a tree and would land across a couple of our wires and would fall on through, the time that it was across those two wires would be a fault condition. But since it falls on through, that would be a temporary fault. A lightning strike would be temporary since it doesn't stay on there for very long. A permanent fault would be more like a big tree like you talked about out of right-of-way, falling across, tearing down our lines, breaking poles. That fault is still there. It's going to be permanent until we get line crews there to cut the tree, make repairs to the pole, and restore service. So we have momentary and permanent outages due to this. Try to describe this. A momentary outage is an outage that just lasts for a couple seconds, whereas a permanent outage would be for half hour to maybe several hours until we can get a crew out there to make repairs. Most faults or most problems on an electric utility system are temporary in nature. It's anywhere to 70 to 80% of the problems that happen on our system are temporary. So our goal is to not have permanent outages to our customers for a problem that's just temporary. So to get by with that, we use some different devices to protect our system. First of all, our number one priority is to protect the public. So if there's a fault on our system, our number one priority is to get rid of that fault by opening some protective device to protect the public. Our second goal is to protect our equipment so we don't damage more equipment, which would cause longer outages. And the third thing would be to improve the reliability, to sectionalize these protective devices to where it would affect the fewest amount of customers as possible. We do this by installing two things: fuses and reclosers. And a fuse is just like your breaker box at home or your fuse panel at home. Whenever you have some type of a problem, that fuse or that breaker will open, and it will stay open until you go there to put it back in. Same thing with our fuses. We have to physically go there and put it back in. Whereas the reclosers is a smarter device that when there's a fault on the system, it will open and it will close back in, open and close back in. For instance, if that tree limb that blew out of the tree and landed across those two wires, when that happens, that recloser is going to see that fault and it's going to open. If that tree limb falls on through, that reclosure is going to close back in 2 seconds later. If that tree limb fell through, that's it. Everybody's back to normal. It was a momentary outage. If that tree limb's still there, that reclosure closes back in. The fault's still there, so it's going to open again. It's going to wait a few seconds. It's going to close back in. If the tree limb's gone, we're good. We're back to normal. If the tree limb is still there, it's going to open a third time, and it's going to lock out, which will then be a permanent outage, and we will actually have to send somebody out there to find out what happened. So these the momentary blinks that a lot of people see and sometimes are annoyance are actually preventing permanent outages for people that could last several hours. So it's actually a system that actually improves reliability for our customers. Another device we use is fault indicators, which I brought some because we've kind of been using these a lot recently. And it's just a device that we hang on our conductors, and it has several LEDs on it, which gives us feedback of what happened on the system. So when we have one of these momentary outages, sometimes the customers may be back in service, but we want to try to find out, where was this problem? And this helps us. We put these out through the line, and it helps us to see which section the problem was in. Also, when we have a permanent outage, it helps us locate where the problem is quicker, so we can get to, find it quicker and restore service to our customers faster. In the last couple of years, we've made a few improvements to our system on East State Street. I get over here. Tim said it's hard to see, but I'll try to point out. The substation's over before you get to Dow Lake, and we have 3 circuits come across. The 23004 actually crosses down here just north of East State Street on US 33 and comes down. Bob Evans would be about right here, just to get a point of reference. And it feeds back behind all the businesses, Kroger and all those businesses, and supplies their service, and also cuts across and feeds Tractor Supply, the New Goodies location, and those customers. That's the 23004. The 23001 and 02 come across the hill together, and this will be Don Woods right in here. And before last summer, the 23001 just fed this direction and fed all these customers, which would be right on the street. So the restaurants right on the street, including Applebee's and all that area there. But when you head east towards Marietta, that used to all be on the 23002, all those businesses. Last summer, you probably saw some construction, and we actually extended the 23001, which used to just be here. We extended it all the way down to the diagnostic hybrid section. And we put all of those customers on the 23001. So what we did was we increased capacity to the area by adding a whole new line right here, so we can feed the customers from either circuit. We also reduced exposure because this 23002 goes all the way out to Federal Hocking High School, way out that way. So we took a lot of that rural exposure off of the city customers. And so we've got a much shorter circuit, which is theoretically more reliable. And then we also added some sectionalizing. The reclosures I talked about, we added reclosures on both sides, right where it comes down to Don Wood. So if we have a fault or a problem on this side, all of these customers will not see that problem. If we have a fault on this side, all these customers will not see that problem. And improved switching capability we added. We installed new switches anywhere that we had tie points with these 3 circuits. So if one circuit has an outage, we have a lot of flexibility to feed from different circuits, different directions to try to pick up a lot of these customers, if not all of them. And in the last 2 years, we have completed circuit trimming, vegetation removal on all 3 circuits that feed East State Street. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Anthony DeBoard, who is our customer service rep for Athens.
Thanks, Chris. As Chris just said, I'm Anthony DeBoard. I'm the customer service representative for the Athens area. Basically, I would be the contact for a lot of the large commercial and industrial businesses in the area, or general service businesses as well. If they have any questions or anything like that, they can feel free to contact me, and I can give anyone my contact information as necessary afterwards. As John stated at the beginning, we really do want to thank Councilwoman Bain and Mayor Weil again for having us and allowing us to have an opportunity to give an overview of how we're working to improve reliability and let you know what's going on our end. And we'd like to take the remainder of the time to field any questions that anyone may have about anything that you heard tonight or anything that you have that you'd like to ask us. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming. I think the perception, I mentioned to them when we had our initial meeting that perception always says that the more recent things are, and the more close together they are, the more likely you are to remember them. And so that probably occasioned my response and what I heard from people in my travels. One reason why I think we're pretty vigilant is that we are concerned, other than things we have control over, water, sewer, and transport, natural gas and electricity are really important to our economic development plans. And I really appreciate what you've mentioned about the expansion or the extension of the circuit out to diagnostic hybrids and the improvements in the system which we asked for in 2006. And so actually, I think you mentioned to me that you were in the process, and so that might have exacerbated one of those incidents. Didn't you say that, one of you guys?
Yeah, that was me when we met earlier.
Yeah, that's right.
We were not able to do the switching that we can do now. So
Right,
the
so it's
outage went a
improved.
little longer than it would have if it had happened today.
Yeah, so we have, and we appreciate the new improved service to the major commercial corridor and our emerging high-tech job zone, which is, we've been lucky enough, although the mayor doesn't toot his horn very often on this, but we've been lucky enough to keep the jobs here that were developed here. And so I guess we do it as a team, and I thank you for coming now. Does anybody have a question? This is a good, yeah.
Thank you again, too, and thank you, Mayor Bain, for requesting AEP's presence. I was thinking as well, along East State Street, too, we have our community center, which, and the mayor can correct me as well, too, which is a disaster relief site within the city. So it is important for us to ensure service to that area for a number of reasons, and specifically that is one of them as well, that site is host to major calamity if we need to host and support people. So I wanted, again, to make that presence known and to acknowledge that issue.
Okay, we met before. I remember you saying the duration of all four large outages. I know the tornado one was almost 24 hours, was it? Is that the case? Less than 24. How about the other three? If I remember, two was short duration, fairly short duration.
The one, let me see here. Yeah, the one where we lost the Lightning Restaurant, August the 14th, was close to 7 hours by the time we got that one all done. And like I say, the problem there was we had virtually no switching capabilities because they were right in the middle of the construction to extend that circuit. So today, like Chris was saying, we've established more tie points. So if we run into something like that now, we'd be able to switch. I think we can pick up all of those customers by doing switching a lot quicker.
Okay.
Anybody over there? Chris? Jim?
Excuse me, all three circuits went out when the tree out of the right-of-way fell, which was, I assume, between the Stroud Run substation and East State Street. Is that?
No.
No.
The outage, the transmission is the source for the whole substation. So when you lose your transmission source, the whole substation is
So it was
out.
before the substation?
That's correct.
Okay.
So there, your only option there is to feed from other substations, which now we would actually be able to do that. Now, depending on the temperatures and the load and all that, I don't know if we can pick all of them up that way, but we could pick up a significant portion of them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. My question is, are there any future improvements that are in line for this part of town? at all, or have you guys, I know you've been doing a lot of work in that area, or are you pretty much done with the work that you're going to be doing in that part of town?
No, we are working right now. We have design, and we'll be working, probably it'll be in 2011. A lot of the sectionalizing, the fusing, and reclosures that I talked about to really break the uptown. The uptown circuit here is actually fed from Clark Street. Most of it's fed from Clark Street over by Miller's Chicken area. And we're going to be adding a lot of reclosures and fuses to really break this up so a fault or a problem would only affect a few customers instead of several. So that's the only thing I know of right now I've got in the works for this area of town.
Thanks.
So those faults, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, I've heard about, I'm not speaking specifically of Athens, but the aging grid. Do you have a policy of replacing equipment on do you have a method of replacing equipment? Do you replace equipment every 10 years or 20 years, or how do you handle that?
We have several programs that they're ongoing, continually. For example, we have the circuit inspection repair program that over the last, I think every 10 years, we do 10% of our circuits per year. And so over the last 3 years, we've actually inspected and repaired things we found on these 3 circuits we talked about tonight, because that's the way they fell in the cycle. We also inspect 10% of our poles, looking where they're actually drilling and look for rot and that sort of thing. And they do, like I say, every 10 years you get each of the poles, so 10% a year. We do recloser replacement programs, and depending on the recloser type, it's every 3 to 6 years you replace all of those. So that's the ones that come to mind right away, the programs we got, where we do replace and repair equipment.
So you do have a system then? Thank you.
Mayor?
Oh, I was just interested in the fault detectors. Do those light up when it's not working or light up when it is working?
They light up to tell us that there has, like if you have a fault, it blinks red if it actually saw the fault. So if the fault went through that fault indicator, it will blink red. And the yellow tells you that it's out of power or lost power. So there's nothing, it doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong at that point. You could be back to normal and it would still be blinking. So there's no need to call AEP, but it lets us know that the problem was past that point or upstream of that point. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem at this point or at that time, but it lets you know that there was a problem at some time.
Something took place in the past.
Yeah, and they reset after 24 hours, so it would only blink for 24 hours. And they're pretty visible during the night. The daytime you probably wouldn't see it, but at nighttime you would definitely see it. You'd probably catch your eye, but nothing wrong with it.
Can I ask one question outside the East State Street realm? And that would be for the city's south side, since we do have some large apartment complexes with a large percentage of the population of the city in that area. Where is the power source for that, and have there been upgrades to that?
Talking about like Richland Avenue section. Richland Avenue section's fed from a substation called Elliott Substation, which is up on the hill behind, I'm trying to think, what is that road? Elliott'sville Road. And it comes off the hill and one circuit feeds towards Shade. The other circuit goes out towards Albany and comes down to like Dairy Lane and Richland Avenue section. In the future, we have plans to bring a third circuit out of there, probably to pick up most of the city load from that circuit, and then the other 2 will be rural circuits. I don't know how many years that's out, but it's in the plans. And we just did some recent capacity upgrades to the station equipment, and I think it's been about 2 years ago. So.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we'd like to thank you for coming. It was very informative, and I think people in the audience who are outside watching TV, they actually do watch this. We hear they'll be more informed. And I'm glad that many of the problems that we've seen may not occur. But then again, they might, because it's probability too, right? So but 4 in 1 year, you can understand why the people were concerned. But now you can see that also that there was a lot of nature in it. So, yeah, we thank you for coming and appreciate your work on for our development future, which is something we're very concerned about. Thank you.
Just one more question. If somebody has a power outage, they call you, right? Is there any particular number that you want them to call?
They call the 800-277-2177 number.
Okay.
Yes. And in the phone book, I believe it's under AEPI.
Okay.
So that gets you in the system. That's the quickest way for the whole process to work. If you do that.
You need a flashlight as close to the telephone.
All cell phones glow in the dark anyway. Okay, thanks.
All right.
Thank you again.
Oh, we're going to slide back?
Actually, landlines will work if you use a rotary. I don't have. I have a rotary.
Wait, you said it was okay for us to leave?
Yeah, go for it.
Yes. Yes.
Do you need your power stick or something? Or?
Everything good to go? All right.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, you had an idea.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again.
Sewer plans, engineering, took.
Thank you. Oh, the IT guy, huh?
Go ahead, city services. Why don't we just continue?
Okay, well, I actually don't have all the information I need for a variety of reasons, but I will proceed. I did have a meeting with Andy, and I sometimes get a little confused about what we're doing, but I do know that we have to take money to do, our sewer upgrade from the sewer debt fund, move it over to the regular sewer fund, appropriate it, and authorize expenditure. And it'll be up that amount will be up for first reading on Monday. And I think we want to be ready by the 1st of December to start it. There are 3 parts, at least as I remember. 3 parts. One part is to pay for the study that Jennifer Fromer's company did on the rates. The second one is engineering for the, this is why it's so complex, and I'd like to have it nailed down so I understand it. Engineering for the improvements in the energy efficiency improvements, and I'd like to know, what's going on there. And then the third part, and we will break it down in the actual ordinance when it comes. The third part will be the general upgrade that was planned earlier in a general way by Burgess and Nyepel before Andy was on board. And as I recall it, and I'm not sure I know everything that's here, and I'd like to put it in the ordinance so everyone kind of has a clue on what's going on. But, wastewater treatment consists of primary and secondary. First part, primary is mechanical. And what he is planning and what Burgess and Nyepel told us to do in addition to getting rid of some of the concrete problems is to improve our grits, our screens in order to improve the water treatment plant. So a lot of it will be rehabilitation. The plant we met the Clean Water Act requirements 30 years ago. Now it's time for us to continue to do maintenance. Not that maintenance hasn't been done, but it's going to be more specific and applied in this case. So it's mainly straining out the materials that come through, separating it, and dealing with it in a better way. The second thing will be an expansion of the plant, and that is going to be clarifiers. We may have a secondary clarifier going in, which is part, again, primary treatment. Boy, am I eloquent. But anyway, that's what we'll be moving toward in this general upgrade. The one thing that my standard requirement for the 4th Ward for East State Street is removal of the stink. Every time they've done something to the plant, they said, oh yeah, we're going to remove the stink vein. We're going to take care of it. Well, this time they'd better do it, or they will be in serious trouble with me. Because, go to the library and you walk out and you go, oh my goodness.
It's noticeable. Yeah, it's noticeable.
Yeah, it's been better lately, but they need to do they need to put it in a well, and we do have money building up in that fund. And it may cost more than $250 for this engineering process. I'm going to get the information in the ordinance, so you'll be able to see it. Any questions on it? Primary, secondary is pretty much secure. Yes.
Thank you, Member Bain, for the update on that. Last time we discussed it, there was the possibility of using UV as a treatment for the
Yes, that's
outgoing
one
water. Is that still in the plans?
Yes, that's still in the
Great.
plan. I
So we can
forgot.
get rid of the old chlorine tanks.
Right, and then the hydrogen sulfide too, or wait a minute, the byproduct of power plant effluent that they used to strip the chlorine out before they put it in water. So we'll save 2 reagents once this is done. Any other questions? Do you remember, can you give me a thumbnail?
I
on
could.
what-
You got it. I mean, the 3 components were the expansion, the rehabilitation, well, actually rehabilitation, energy efficiency, and expansion being the third portion, which will be coming back to council, after design to find out what can we fund. My understanding from the conversation was he is indeed looking for about $250,000, of which he'll probably only need $50,000 out of this year's budget. So.
But, we have the money, we can roll it and keep it in the,
Out of the debt
because
fund.
it'll be authorized. That's what it's there for. Any other questions? One of the things that's interesting is we have a proposal that's kind of half-baked at this point in time to accept sewage from another area, and, it'll just come in and we'll treat it. And we do have the capacity with that expansion as long as we get rid of I&I. Does this sound familiar to some of you? Inflow and infiltration, constant nag. But anyway, we do need to, if we get that done, we will be able to take care of the requirements of that EPA mandate. We probably don't have to even expand the plant very much, which will be good. But mainly stink control, primary treatment, and maybe expansion. And repairing all
Is that the technical term?
What?
Is that the technical term?
Yes, stink control, yes. Whatever it takes, a large air wick or whatever.
My only other issue may be that we may need to suspend the rules at an earlier reading in order to get this under contract and the design engineering started. I know you don't like to hear that, but
No, I don't.
we've been talking about the wastewater treatment plant now.
Yeah, well,
Many
we've been
years.
talking about it long enough, it's probably time to get going on it. Okay, my second
Although,
thing.
may I just say something? There's been a series of articles in the Columbus Dispatch about many cities in Ohio and across the nation who are struggling to meet these EPA requirements, and we're in a position to meet them and go beyond them in some instances. So the city engineer and the administration and councils before us have done an excellent job of keeping up with this moving target.
So take another bow, Mayor.
Moving target.
I told him to take another bow. And he didn't. He's not good at taking bows. All right, so this is coming. This is a work in progress, though.
I know.
And I believe that Kathy could tell us. Probably should have asked her before she came. But we do have notes that will be retired in 11 and 13, so we'll be able to borrow money and pay it off again. So, we're paying a lot of money on past $10 million, $20 million of investment, but we're going to retire those debts and then we'll have money. Not that we want them to go totally crazy on this, but we will be in a better place than we might have been. Okay, you make sure, let's see. The other thing I have on my agenda from meeting with Andy is that we are almost ready to close out our RCRA requirements for testing. And so what we're going to be doing is putting through an ordinance that will actually put enough money in the fund to do it. Let's see, 1988, 89, a detect, mainly a paper shuffling error was the final finding on it. And we have struggled with federal EPA, the Chicago people. We've been testing. Our last test was clean, and so we'll be closing the drain well, which is the source of the problem that we have here. And that's so the money will be moved around. That too probably needs to be suspended. so we'll have an ordinance up for that. Oh, it'd be good to get it off the table, right? Only 20 years. Anyway, that's been a long, drawn-out process. Any other? Paul, is there something I forgot? I was there for the first time, we talked sewer plant, and then
I don't believe so in that, but there's some for finance and personnel.
Okay, this? Oh, with city services? No, okay, I'm adjourned.
Okay, Finance and Personnel, unfortunately, I missed the last meeting myself, so I have no...
Power knowledge.
Yeah. I know Service Safety Director Haran Mosley has some information. I don't know whether, Nancy, did you have information? Shall we go with this? Let's go with the source of all desire for money.
We, of course, in addition to, I think what we already heard tonight, appropriation for the bikeway extension, appropriation for the contract design engineering for the wastewater treatment plant, we also have appropriation needed in recreation, transaction class 101s. Did we settle on a figure?
I think it's only about 30,000 to finish out the year.
We also need are requesting and asking for an additional appropriation of about $7,000 in internal services and council. It would be split in the transaction class 100s. That's for a part-time IT to assist Ron Forrest in repairing computers and updating our website, and eventually also the phone system. And then a large dollar amount is coming from the mayor regarding transportation. Transit. And I don't know that the auditors had a chance to review these figures yet, so she will, of course, need to do that. The indication is we need about $30,000. We are waiting on reimbursement from equipment and bus purchases and some of the stimulus funding, but it has not come in to date.
Actually, when you get down to it, we'll probably need more than 30,000. We're waiting for reimbursement of a bus that we have out there that should be coming soon. That's about $55,000 in reimbursement. And we still have another payment for the feds of $35,000 coming at us for November, December. As it stands now, we are short for the time being. We'd have to add, when she says 30,000, that's the 30,000 we'll have to dump in to transit to make it work. Let's see, if I look at the revenue schedules, of course, we're only about a little bit behind on fare box, by about 10%, and fuel reimbursement. Of course, we get reimbursement from McDonald's because they basically buy the fuel on our dollar and then take it back, give it back to us afterward, since they use the diesel pumps at OU. So we should be expecting some of there, although that's low. We appropriated, we were estimating revenue of $60,000. Year to date, we've only got about $32,000 in, so it's going to be low on that. But really what I'm trying to say is that we're going to be short a bit of money, and we'll get some of it back, but we'll still need a good chunk to just keep it rolling. If I understand for the next, let's see, where is it here? Total invoices for McDonald's to the end of the year will be $120,000. But again, we're getting about 55 back, 35 from the feds, 55 back from reimbursement for the bus, 35 back for the from the feds, and it's basically that to leave us about 28, 30,000 still in the hole. We also have equipment reimbursement, I see, too, from ODOT that's coming at us, about 7,000. I think that's the lifting equipment that we put in from the ARA stimulus package money. So we're short again, but that's the way it runs. I can give you better numbers come Thursday if you want tighter numbers.
Okay, thank you.
But if you have excess in diesel, then, it might even almost be a wash. I mean, not a wash, because we already are subsidizing the bus system, but it's not as bad as it seems, because diesel's cheaper.
I had a thought while the mayor was talking that I hadn't thought. Why is McDonald's restaurant buying fuel. But it's McDonald Transportation with whom we, with whom we contract
Athens
to run our bus
Yes.
system. Right?
We actually get charged by the hour revenue bus traveler, about $56 an hour. And what happens, of course, that's everything, including their fuel. When the fuel was $4 a gallon or diesel was somewhere in that neighborhood, they actually were, they couldn't change the contract at that time. They were stuck at pricing. This year, they didn't really raise it that much. In fact, I'm trying to remember, they did raise one section of it, but it wasn't that. It wasn't the fuel, and it wasn't their pay, but it was something else. I think it was services and mechanics in that sense. That should be lower next year because we're on a second bus right now. We've got a good mix of buses right now. And again, we're actually pooled together with Summit on Coach Run in terms of the total hours that they produce. So we get a discount. We're not buying their stuff, but we get a discount because they have two bus services in the city. If we were both standalone, we'd have to renegotiate. It would be a higher price per hour. I mean, if we were to say, let's give up the bus system, Summit would have a hard time maintaining it at the same price. Because they're operating two different bus systems in a city, it's a discount for both of us. So we're saving a little bit of money there, but we're up for another contract this year coming up too.
But we run our bus on the other hill, right?
Actually, our bus system services both of them. We have our once-an-hour loop going up to Summit and one going up to Courtyard. Mm-hmm. They have their own. Courtyard, of course, got taken over by OU. They have their bus that runs in parallel with ours. And then Summit has its own bus with its giant wrap on it. That's the one they've contracted with McDonald's. The one that looks real busy. I'm sure you've seen it.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like a green something or other. That's theirs. And that runs exclusively for them. That's the thing that they really want, is they wanted exclusivity for their tenants, which was a problem for us, since we would have it open to everybody, as mandated.
Thank you.
And on a different transportation note, and I'm sure Chris wants to announce the Go Bus that's coming, and that was also in the newspaper. Tuesday, I believe, November 9th is when we'll have a kickoff, and of course all elected officials will be invited to attend. These are the $10 big buses that go between Cincinnati and Athens and Columbus. So I'm pretty excited about providing that.
Yeah, I got pulled over by Jessica Stroh. Was at the Personal Plus banquet, and she came up and said, "We sold our first ticket." And I said, "Really?" To Cincinnati. So she's all agog for that. She likes it. So we're starting up. It's going to be. It should be interesting.
In addition to that, my understanding is that the rec center, community center, will also be accommodating the bus, a new sort of bus station down there, which with a little more space for the bigger buses.
Yeah, we're putting a contract together with HAPCAP to do that. We'll have a bus shelter, probably where the photovoltaics are, solar panels are, towards that end of our community center complex in the parking lot there. Mostly to accommodate two buses, because there'll be an overlap of two buses at a time, so people want to transfer from one to the other, between the Cincinnati line and the Columbus line. We have the money. Again, this is all reimbursed for a bus shelter in that location as well. We're still putting the plans together on that, the size of the bus shelter, what kind of it looks like. The bus shelter that's there presently right now, which is on the west side of the community center, is actually for our city bus system. That will remain where it is. So we'll be busy doing stuff, and there will be a kiosk in the community center for putting your own tickets in, buying your own tickets. So that's going to be a little bit off to the right-hand side of the counter, I believe, last time I heard, unless they've changed it. Rich is involved in it, so he knows where everything's going, just because it is his area, his bailiwick.
Thank you. Just totally off the subject, you mentioned the photovoltaic array. Is that plugged in yet, or when is it?
This morning at the staff meeting, they said the inverters have arrived, but they have still some wiring to do, and they should have that up and running. If you want, we can have a celebration of that too. In fact, I think we're planning that too. So you can come along for that and see how it plugs in. I think we're working out some of this. There's still some minor details that need to be dealt with. The monitoring, electronic monitoring for the outside parties, that's being discussed with Ron Forrest, IT, as well as Dovetail and SolarVision. What else are we waiting for? Fences around the dumpsters, I think, which is a minor thing.
And some, a little more painting of the huge concrete bollards, drive into the,
Yeah.
so they're asking for more reflective pieces on that for evening.
Yeah, those are those little pillars that go around the corners there. I don't know if you've been checking it out or not. I drove around it all Sunday just to see what it felt like, and it's like this giant carport. It's very unassuming once you look at it and say, oh, that's nice, Maybe we'll string it up with, I don't know, Halloween ornaments or something.
Okay, thank you. We have listened to all of our, I see the auditor has her hand up.
Back to finance and personnel. I have
Yes,
one.
okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. Well, we've already talked about this, but I'd like to get this started through, and it is the online payment of withholdings for companies. And because of the time of the year, however, I'd like to still try this, is I'd like to, of course, I need to work with Debbie, but like to start this effective, it needs to be effective on a January 1. So I'd like to start it effective January 1, 2011 for payroll companies who are already set up for all their online payments. And then the next year for any other businesses that do their own online withholdings, and try to get that started. As I said, we spend thousands and thousands of dollars mailing out booklets of withholdings because we have hundreds of companies that file monthly and quite a few that file quarterly. And all of our forms are already online. And this is a requirement, Ohio Police and Fire. We pay all of our taxes, our pension funds, everything online. Very few entities allow you to mail them a check anymore. And so payroll companies, for sure, such as ADP, are already set up to do online payments for any of their withholdings and anything else that they do. So we'd like to maybe start them January 1. So if we could start this through, we could get letters out letting people know it was coming, and maybe make it an option to others who want to go ahead and start next year, but not a requirement. So I don't know how anybody feels about that. We could go ahead and do that. It would save a lot of paperwork in our office, and actually it saves time and paperwork on the other end.
I did note in your your proposed ordinance that there, even so, there was a disclaimer for smaller companies or companies that, for one reason or another, couldn't comply.
Right. We did put that in there. We don't want a lot of companies just say they don't just because, but yeah, that has to be. There will be some smaller companies that just won't be set up for that, especially in the beginning. And we're okay with that, but we'd like to get most of them online, as I said. We do all of our payments for the city online for everything, and most, any bigger business is already set up for that, and certainly payroll companies.
So your request to start this in January 2011 is going to require
Maybe a suspension on second reading or something. We can be prepared and send out letters to everybody, have it all ready to go and put it out there.
So what are we being asked to approve? Do you need
This will have to go into our
software?
code. This is a collection, requiring companies to file their withholdings online. These are not your personal tax returns or business returns, just your withholdings, which of course is the major part of our collection. But yeah, it needs to go in be an ordinance, so then it becomes part of our code.
Did all council members get that by email? I think so.
Okay, I must have missed that.
Yeah, it should be in your file.
I think you sent out sometime last week, right?
I think it's been a couple weeks or more. But I'll go in there again and maybe we'll see if there's any other changes, but I'll add that change for the payroll companies and then everyone else the next year kind of thing, and then you can look it over again and try to start it through on Monday. If you need to make any changes, then we'll just deal with it. But as I said, if we don't try to get this started now, then we have to wait another year, and I'd like us to try it.
I would just like to take advantage of this opportunity for all the benefits you raised about being able to pay bills online. I would still like to see the city pursue the possibility for our utility bills to be paid online.
We're already begun our discussions and our plan for implementation of the utility billing upgrade through CMI, and that was already brought up at the first meeting about pursuit of the online billing.
The capabilities are there, but everything costs, and so the way it out.
Fix a lot of things with money.
Yeah.
Okay, we have finished with finance and personnel, we hope, and that finishes our discussion with all of our committees. Anybody have anything else they need to add? Questions? Okay.
I get the feeling we've missed something, but I don't know what it is.
It seems as though, but
I'd like to add one thing.
See?
I do not believe that Title 41 is enforced outside of the city limits.
You're right, you're correct.
I know,
I sent-
but I think
I
a
sent
lot
a
of-
response to the Athens News already.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Because
Thank you.
I wrote the letter that talked about Title 41, but it was in the context of a very specific request for a sewer expansion for a person.
We are adjourned.
We are adjourned.